After multiple weeks of less than ideal Bitcoin price action, many investors are wondering where we are in this BTC cycle. Here we'll look at the data to see where we likely are and what's likely to happen next. Today we're going to be looking at where we are in this BTC cycle and where better to start than the BTC growth since cycle lows chart we have here on bitcoinmagazinepro.com. And what we can do is, I'll just ignore the first two cycles as we're not very comparable to them currently. And what we can see is, where is BTC in this cycle? Well, pretty much exactly where we'd expect it to be, especially when looking at the comparison to the 2017 cycle. We're pretty much right on track. We're actually still slightly outperforming the 2017 cycle, which is pretty amazing considering that we're kind of expecting diminishing returns and reduced volatility in this market. And what we can see is, yeah, we're still massively outperforming kind of traditional expectations. I think just because we've entered six-figure territory and had a little bit of boring price action, a little bit of retracement, people have maybe expected a little bit more than really what is fairly normal for BTC. And yeah, overall, I think there's nothing to really be worried about. I think people are getting ahead of themselves, and we kind of have the data to back that up and kind of have the data to show where we probably are in this cycle. So just for reference, note that in this 2017 cycle here, we would be 818 days in, and this price action, this blue price action here, would take us to around March, April time 2017. Just bear that in mind. And what we can do is look at a few charts to kind of maybe look to where we could be if we are to compare to previous cycles. So what we can see here is the Puel multiple. Now this is looking at BTC miner earnings in today's US dollar denominated terms compared to a previous yearly average. And what we can do is just draw a line around here. So this is a level of 1. So if investor earnings are above this, the orange line is above this, they're earning more than their previous yearly average. And if it's beneath this, they're earning slightly less. And what we can see is pretty typical price action, well, data action behavior for this metric. We have a big run up post halving, well, pre-halving. Been a long day. We have a big dip following that, and then a period of consolidation of around 6 to 12 months before we regain the value of 1, come back, retest this, and that really kicks off the secondary phase of the bull cycle, the euphoric phase of the cycle. And what we can see is pretty much exactly the same in this cycle, where the more things change, the more things stay the same. Everything is looking exactly as we'd really expect it to. This previous cycle, the 2020-2021 cycle, is slightly different due to the fact we had that big COVID jump just before the BTC halving event. But again, fairly similar, where once we had this halving, we had this consolidation just beneath 1, came up, didn't actually come back and retest before we rallied higher. So I definitely think 2017 is where we should be kind of expecting BTC to follow in terms of price action, not necessarily in terms of percentage gains. And like I said, keeping in mind from the previous chart, the BTC growth since cycle lows, where the BTC price in this current cycle, being 818 days as I film this, aligns very nicely, in fact, with the Puel multiple, where if I just zoom in on this price action here, again, aligning pretty nicely as we retested here on March 25th, 2017. Pretty much exactly where we are in terms of time as well. So not only is the cycle playing out very similarly to 2017 in terms of its price action, its data action, but also in terms of the length of time to actually reach certain thresholds. And if we look at something like the MVRV score, kind of similar story, similar expectations here. What we did is we had this big initial run up, if I just draw here, following a long period of BTC being at a discount in this accumulation zone. We had this big initial run up, a bit more of a sustained drawdown period before we ran up again. And then again, kind of had this little bit of retracement. It's not exactly the same as 2017, but definitely comparable, where in this cycle, what we did is run up from around $50,000-$60,000, or about $1 trillion market cap, up to just beneath $1 trillion, had a little bit of a retracement, and then bang, back up to $2.1 trillion. Again, similar to in the 2017 cycle, January ran up to about 18 billion, retraced to around 12, 13, then ran back up to around 20, and then again had this retracement right around here in March 2017. And this isn't just the total MVRV Z-score that we're getting a kind of similar vibe to there here. What we can see is in the short-term holder MVRV, again, similar story. where we had this slight retracement to beneath this MVRV short-term holder metric level of 1 around August 2016, here in around August 2024, before we regained that, had some more sustained positive price action, before we came back, retested this level, rebounded, came back again to slightly beneath this level, which was around $1,000 at that time, on March 23rd, 2017, and now we are looking like we could come down and retest this, or at least have that short-term holder realized price come up and meet price action. If I just zoom in here, we can see that that's currently at around $92,500, but ever increasing. So potentially we see BTC retest that level slightly beneath it before hopefully getting the secondary euphoric phase of the cycle where we really see price action rally to the upside. What we can also see is there's some other things that we can maybe point towards to say this is exactly where we'd expect to be in this cycle. I know it's something we've discussed a lot on the channel recently, but I do think this is going to be one of the major catalysts of the coming weeks and months for more sustained bullish price action. What we could see is in 2016 here, we had this increasing US dollar strength index year-on-year value before we turned the tide and had this big sustained downtrend, which really fueled BTC's bull cycle up to $20,000 from the turning point here, which is about $1,000, about 20x. I don't think we'll do a 20x this cycle from where we are now, but interesting to note, again, very similar time here in March, if not slightly later, April 2017, when this is really turning over, compared to today where it's January, February time. So another interesting point, of course, something we've mentioned before, it's not often you get a direct comparison of the current president to what a historic president has done previously in terms of what they've done in terms of economic policies to change the US dollar strength index and monetary policies. But we have the exact same president we did exactly in this time as well. So another interesting point to note. And another thing we'll look at is if I just open the TradingView chart here, what we can see is BTC just on the monthly chart here. And here we're just looking at the time it took to reclaim the BTC all-time high and have a close above that. And I am going to cheat a little bit and say we'll ignore the slight breach we had here. That was the ETF euphoria phase. So I'm just going to ignore that. What we can see is in this 2017 cycle, it took 40 months to reclaim that previous all-time high. In the next cycle, 36. In our current cycle, 36. And what we can also do is if I just delete these so it's a little easier to see. And if we look at the amount of time it took from cycle lows to all-time high, what we can see is from this cycle here, it was 35 months of price action. In the next cycle, it was 35 months of price action, and currently as I film this we are 27 months of price action in, so we potentially have 8 months left of bull market to go, which would put us in around October 2025, which again aligns with pretty much all the data that we're seeing. One thing to note is even though we potentially may see a top out in October 2025 when looking at the previous cycles, one thing I would take into account is we are potentially seeing lengthening cycles, but as well as that, if we are to see a top out in Q4 2025, in October, historically a good month for BTC, that's just prior to November, which has historically been by far our best month. So if BTC looks like it's topping out in October just because the previous two cycles are showing that, it wouldn't surprise me if we do see a couple more months of sustained positive price action following that. So if I just go back to the TradingView chart here to kind of maybe finally close out where I think we may be in the cycle, if I just remove all the drawings and just go back to the daily chart here, I do think as we're most comparable to 2017, that's where we should be focusing. If we were to make a comparison with where we are in the previous 2020 cycle, somewhere around here would be my optimistic guess, but maybe slightly less pessimistic, more pessimistic, less optimistic. Got there in the end would be up here. But as I said, I don't think that's as comparable to our 2017 comparison, whereas I think we have very similar price action where we breached an all-time high, big psychological level once we first broke $1,000, retrace came back above, retrace back beneath, and I think we'd be somewhere around here, which is where not only the Puel multiple MVRV, but also looking at macro factors like the DXY strength as well, also kind of point towards us being in this region of the BTC bull cycle, which would obviously be great and lead to a few months of very sustained positive bullish price action. Again, I don't think we're going to see a 2,000% return from where we are currently, but I do potentially feel like we could see 6 to maybe 12 months of sustained bullish price action once BTC can reclaim its current all-time high. So just to summarize, Bitcoin currently looks to be in a healthy place within this cycle with 6 to 12 months of positive price action likely remaining. And the current Bitcoin price and data action looks comparable to spring 2017, probably March, if not April 2017, which gives us around 9 months before the cycle is likely to peak, which would put us at around October, November 2025. And while it's useful to look at comparisons, always remember that it's better to react to the data than trying to predict what could happen next. Each cycle is unique in its own right, and BTC could well surprise a lot of investors. Potentially models break to the upside and we see BTC rally for the next 2 years in a BTC strategic reserve fueled super cycle, or maybe we don't live up to expectations. Maybe this cycle falls short, black swan event, who knows? That's why we need to look at on-chain data, see when people are selling, look at the actual underlying supply and demand economics of the network, rather than just focusing on historical comparisons. While these comparisons are useful to kind of gauge expectations of what could happen, remember, it's always better to react than predict. If you like this video, then please visit bitcoinmagazinepro.com, where our analytics help you to cut through the noise to make informed, data-driven decisions about Bitcoin. With over 150 live charts, personalized indicator alerts, in-depth crypto industry reports, API access, and more, all for a fraction of the standard industry price. And let me know your thoughts in the comments below and on social media. Where do you think we currently are in this BTC cycle? Do you share a similar sentiment to me and feel like we could be just on the cusp of the euphoric phase of our BTC bull cycle, looking to 2017 for comparisons? Or do you think that maybe this cycle is going to be totally unique? We're going to see something completely different and all of this is pointless anyway. Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comments and on social media. I look forward to reading and replying to them. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.